And welcome back. Here we are with our recap of the 2024 NCAA Outdoor Championships. This will be the men's recap first. And in this recap, we'll kind of look over what happened. And then, as I had predicted, it was an amazing meet. A lot of shocks, but a lot of great performances. And in this cap, we'll focus on right versus wrong in regards to my predictions. We'll look over each event and discuss what we saw. Also, have a conversation: is Oregon, the University of Oregon's venue, the best eye visual place for a national championship, especially when it's such a anticipated meet? It draws a lot of energy online, and we didn't always see those seats in the stands full because of the venue and perhaps its location. Maybe we should have it at the University of Texas, or a venue that is more that's more unease to access. But more for that later. Let's jump right into recapping what we saw, which was some great championship performances. And we'll start in our first leg, which is the sprints and hurdles. And the way I had it set up, I initially thought that not necessarily that this would be a battle between Leroy Burrell of Auburn and Carl Lewis of Houston, but it kind of turned out to be that way. That was the chatter online. And I think one of the reasons why it was the chatter online is because, of course, uh, Leroy Burrell famously left the University of Houston, where he had been a long term head coach, to take over Auburn. And this was shortly after he had brought Carl Lewis on to kind of coach the 100-meter sprinters. And I don't, we never know what the true story was, but we know that Leroy left, and now Carl Lewis is coaching the sprinters at Houston. And there's that battle of Carl Lewis and Leroy Burrell that has been going since the early 90s. Yes, this is a long term battle. And if we're going to lean to one person and say Victor, we'll probably give it to Carl, because I had predicted the battle would be between Favor Ash of Auburn and Louis Hinchcliffe of Houston. And as we saw, it was Louis Hinchcliffe of Houston that claimed the gold. He did run a 9.95. That's a win legal time, so not wind aided. And it's been a while. I'm not even sure if we've ever had a European champion. He is from Great Britain, so that likely, they're going to have a pretty solid team at the Olympics, as they always do. But he's kind of their next star. And does he return? Does he come back? And it seems that, more often than not, the foreign athletes tend to stay in college a little longer. And I actually predict that he'll probably stay as Houston as well. Carl Lewis did a phenomenal job with coaching him, and his comments have kind of made the rounds of social media, asking everyone to stop coaching from their computers. And he said his start is fine, work on your finish. And that was, as many have said online, a bar, because Louis Hinchcliffe's finish is fantastic. He is a very strong, technically sound 100-meter sprinter. He runs it very well, and he proved that. That 9.95 is solid gold. And I'm not going to say he's a medal threat or anything, but I'm sure that we may see him in Paris running for Great Britain. The 200, I had it between Tarsus Origo of Alabama versus Wanye McCoy of Florida, and we had a dark horse of Lance Lang. And that actually was not a prediction. So right now I am one right, one wrong, because what happened was that in the 200, um, in the finals, Wanye McCoy looked to come up a little lame, and it looked like he was going to cost Florida some points, because this was a tight team battle. Um, but Robert Gregory found a way to get second, and the winner was Czech Traore of Penn State, going from the D3 champion to now the D1 champion, and having a fantastic year at Penn State. He was the only person who ran sub 20 this weekend at all, because there was no sub 20 in the prelims, and he was the only sub 20 in the finals, 1995. So a huge win for him. He is a senior, so we'll likely be seeing a new national champion next year. And I think, Wanya McCoy, if he stays at Florida, he'll probably be the favorite, along with Tarsus Oregot, of Alabama. I really did think Tarsus had a really good shot at winning. He looked phenomenal at the SEC championships, just didn't carry it over to the nationals. Unfortunately, again, because he did finish fourth. Now, moving to the 400, I did predict it would be Christopher Morales Williams of Georgia versus Samuel Ogazi of Alabama, with the dark horse being Judson Lincoln the fourth. The Judson prediction did not come to fruition, but Christopher Morales, I did pick him to win, and he did win indeed. And it was a little bit closer than we thought. We were waiting to see if he could get a sub 44. Didn't happen, but 44:47 was the winning time, and he is the national champion. And no surprise there, the super freshman from Alabama, Samuel Ogazi, was close second at 44:52, and Javon Powell of Florida PR'd, running 44:54, and a huge big 16 points for the Gators. And the other shocker was Ahmad Robinson, who had finished fourth with a 44:7. He was disqualified for making a few steps outside of the line. Disappointing, because he did run a pretty solid race, and we know that he ran a great 4x4. More on that in a few moments. And so we'll say I'm two for three right now. And then in the high hurdles, we had what I thought was a fantastic race. And it changed, I guess, mid race, where we thought, oh my God, here come, what's going on with Tharp? Because I predicted it to be between Devion Wilson and Jacoby Tharp. Devion Wilson of Houston, Jacoby Tharp of Auburn, and the dark horse was Darius Luff of Nebraska. And it ended up being Luff. He got a phenomenal start out of the blocks and did not let up. And Tharp had a slow start, and he had to play catch up. And unfortunately, Wilson did hit a hurdle that kind of knocked him, a little out of it, although he did finish fifth overall. But Luff ended up being your national champion, the senior from Nebraska, 13-19, ran a technically sound race, as we expect from the Nebraska athlete to do. And Tharp of Auburn closed phenomenally well, 13-20. Had a phenomenal season as a freshman. And the other freshman, Malachi Snow of San Jose State, finished fourth. I think if Snow can get that technique to where Tharp is, Snow is much faster in the open 100 than Tharp. I think he's got a bright future. He just got to get that technique down. But you can't knock Tharp and Luff, because Luff looked phenomenal in that final race. And he held on to win. And congratulations to him for ending his senior season. He's had a phenomenal career in Nebraska in the past 2 years. He's been a name that's constantly being mentioned for a title threat, and he finally came through it here. And then the 400 hurdles was a bit of a shock. I'm going to say that. I had it between Clement Dukas of Tennessee and Chris Robinson of Alabama. Dukas grabbed his leg early in the 400 hurdle race. And so it was a battle between Chris Robinson of Alabama and the two dark horses that I had, which were Caleb Dean of Texas Tech and Nathaniel Ezekiel of Baylor. And it was all Caleb Dean. Now, I didn't pick him to win. I said he was a dark horse. I will admit that. But what I do want credit for is the fact that I had been mentioning all year long about his speed. He is incredibly fast, and I kept saying if he can just get that technique. And he looked every bit of it. 47:23 in the 400 hurdles. He blew the field away. I mean, away. He is now one of I think, the second fastest 400 hurdler in NCAA history. He surpasses Karan Clement. He's only surpassed by the great Ray Benjamin of USC. He had an incredible performance. He was phenomenal. I'm quite positive he can run a low 44. So expect to see him on the big stage quite often. I think he is going to be a big name moving forward. You can't run a time like that and not have I think, a promising future on the professional circuit. That was a great race by him. In the 4x1, my choice was LSU versus Houston, with the dark horse being Auburn. So I got it wrong here again. It was Auburn. Although I was excited about them at the beginning of the season, I had mentioned they began the season under 39 seconds. And although they ran a 38:03, I really thought were going to make a literal shot at probably running sub 38. And they just missed it. 38:03 is, no slouch time, but hats off to the Auburn Tigers. They looked phenomenal. They had a really solid weekend They finished second overall. They almost won the national title. I think what they were missing was a 4x4. And I think, knowing Leroy Burrell, he's going to have a 4x4 for next year. And I think it's fair to say Auburn is now a contending program. It's different between the SEC and the national championships as we are learning. Granted, the SEC to me is the best conference, but combining all these programs from throughout the nation to compete makes it very difficult because you are literally inching by in points, and that's what Florida kind of did. More on that later. In the 4x4, what a fantastic final event. Hats off to Texas A&M, and hats off to Ahmad Robinson. I've shared with you all a number of times that I think he is a fantastic anchor, and I think he kind of submitted himself as one of the greatest anchors ever in NCAA history with the way he ran that final race. And it was a doozy. We saw Florida lead it for, I want to say, two or three legs, and Ahmad Robinson kicked it into high gear, clocked a 43-2 anchor, and although Florida's anchor ran a 43-8 split, 43-8, 43-9, he fell from first to third, and that was where Arkansas kind of snuck in and surpassed them also. But three teams ran sub 259. It was 258.37 by Texas A&M, which is a new meet record, breaking Florida's old meet record. Florida still holds the national record, but no longer the meet record. Arkansas ran 258.83, and then Florida ran 258.98. So three teams under 3 minutes. And unfortunately, Alabama wasn't in it, and we thought they would be. They finished ninth. They didn't even score a point in the 4x4. Don't know what happened there. I'm pretty sure they'll work out whatever they need to work out in the off season, and they'll come back stronger. They have a very talented program. But hats off to A&M and Ahmad Robinson, that fantastic anchor. He just, when he gets those arms going and that head reeling, he really just powers his way. It seems like he's not going to be denied, and that was the clear case here. Ran a fantastic race. And now moving to our second leg, we'll talk about the distance runners, which had its own bit of interesting discussion. And here we are with leg two, our distance events recap, which was quite an impressive display of running and tactical styles and apparently great coaching going on at Washington. We had some really strong performances, some eye openers, more notably in our first one we're going to recap, which is the 800, and then we had some expected champions. In the 800, I had it as Sam Whitmarsh of Texas A&M versus Darius Kipiego of Iowa State, with the dark horse being Yusuf Bizimana of Texas, and unfortunately none of those guys were the champion. Whitmarsh did end up finishing runner-up and second for A&M, providing 8 valuable team points. Kipiego did not make the final, and although Bizimana was in the final, he was not a threat to win it. When you look in the 800, the champion of the 800, he was in the back, and that's Shane Cohen of Virginia. He was in the back for majority of that race. In the last sort of 150, he kicked it into high gear and blazed past the entire field and missed, almost a shot at stumbling, and vaulted from the back to the front, running a 144.97, a personal best, and our second sub 145 on the year, to beat Whitmarsh, who ran 145.10. An outstanding close for the senior, and that just really had to have him feeling a different type of way because he looked fantastic closing. Whitmarsh 145.10 in second, and third was Finley McClear of Iowa State. He was the Iowa State guy that got through, not his teammate Darius Kipiego. And that was a fantastic 800 race. So far, I've correctly predicted the 100, the 400, and that is it. Because I did have Alabama, Arkansas, and Florida in the 4x4 with Texas A&M as the dark horse, and I picked Arkansas to win it, and they were close, but it was Texas A&M. So far, just two right, missing the 200, the high hurdles, the low hurdles, both relays, and the 800. So that's 2 for 5. In the 1500, I had the defending champion Nathan Green of Washington versus Colin Solomon of Northern Arizona, with the dark horse being Ethan Strand of North Carolina. And I will admit, going into the 1500, this was actually one of my stronger predictions, and I thought, oh, this will definitely come to pass. But of course, as we're learning with these championship meets, that's not how it works. We were able to see Nathan Green, Colin Solomon qualify along with Ethan Strand to the finals, but the finals was a different monster. And it was a different Washington guy. And as you see in the picture, it was a close battle. But it was Joe Waxcom of Washington, who had a great indoor season, is now having a great outdoor season. Here he is, another Washington guy winning the national title, running a 3:39.48. No record or personal best, but it's still a solid performance. Um, Solomon of Northern Arizona finished fourth, 3:39.92. And Ethan Strand finished ninth at 3:40.90, so he did not score. And neither did Nathan Green of Washington, who finished 10th at 3:40.98. So, bit of a disappointment for some of the predictions, but not a shock. Joe Wascom. He's a great 1500-meter runner, and that's a great program at developing those great middle distance runners. Then in the 5K, and this is where I want to poke my chest out a little bit because I have seen him in person and I kept saying it. I had it listed as Parker Wolf of North Carolina versus Brian Musso of Oklahoma State versus Hepton Samuel of New Mexico, with the dark horse being Kai Robinson of Stanford and who was the defending champion, and Nico Young of Northern Arizona. So I want to poke my chest out because I've been harping all year long, specifically when I saw him in person, that Parker Wolf is one of the best 5K runners because he literally has such a phenomenal close, and that kid cannot be defeated by anybody. And that was proven to be the point. His last 2 laps, he looked phenomenal again. And although, Nico Young looked to be in good position along with Kai Robinson and Brian Musso. So the top 4 were all, people I had listed in this preview. But it was my prediction, Parker Wolf pulling it out 13:54.43 to win the 5K. No personal best, that doesn't matter because what that was a win against an extremely deep and talented field. We are not done hearing any of those names. Even when they graduate, we're going to hear those names again, most notably Kai Robinson. And he's no slouch. He finished third, 13:55, and Nico Young of Northern Arizona, 13:54.65. He was the runner-up. He did run a great race, but Parker Wolf was the best 5K runner, and I was, feeling myself with that because I had been touting his speed, and he showed up and showed out. What a great 5K he ran. And hats off to North Carolina. That was to me, their only positive of the day because their distance team took some hits. Things did not always go their way at the national championship meet as we thought they would. And that's where we'll head to our next event, the 10K, where I had it listed as Alex Phillip of North Carolina versus Patrick Kiprot of Arkansas, and the dark horse being Victor Kiprot of Alabama. And it was none of those three. There was a stumble in the race between Phillip and Patrick Kiprot of Arkansas, and neither of them were able to get back in it, even though Hepton Samuel was also a victim in the 10K. He got back up and found a way to win. Excuse me for doubting the young freshman because he had a pretty phenomenal weekend. He is your 10K champion, 28:07.52. Victor Kiprot, who I had listed as the dark horse, found a way to finish second for Alabama, a huge 8 points. But Samuel also ran a personal best, 28:07.82. Kiprot 28:08.59. And then another freshman finished third, and Dennis Kipnikitich of Oklahoma State. Strong trio right there. There were a lot of personal bests in the 10K. Really sad for Alex Phillip, who finished 12th, and for Patrick Kiprop of Arkansas, who finished 8th. That fall took him out of it because he was in great position. He looked very comfortable, and the fall just seemed to just be devastating because we're looking at potentially two national titles for North Carolina. He was in great position, but that's unfortunate. Then our last distance event was the steeplechase, and before we do that, let's recap so far. So I was 2-5 going into, so that's what the 200, 110 hurdles, the 400 hurdles, uh, the both relays. That would be five right there. So one, two, three, four, five. Yep. Then we have the 800 wrong. That's six. The 1500 wrong. That's seven. 5K right. So that's three of seven. 10K wrong. That's three of eight. And the steeplechase, I had it listed as Nathan Mountain of Virginia versus Abdul Hakim of Virginia. Excuse me, Nathan Mountain of Virginia versus Abdul Hakim of Abu Zahir of Eastern Kentucky. And it was neither of those two. So that would make me 3 for 9. We got the surprise in the 3K. It was Parker Stokes, senior out of Georgetown, running a season's best 8:24:58. Mountain was second. I think the last water jump kind of took him out of it. He seemed to stumble coming out of it, and he finished second overall, 8:25:71. And Abdul Hakim Abu Zahir finished fourth at 8:27:09. Strong performances, but unfortunately, no championships there for Eastern Kentucky or Virginia in the steeplechase. But a shout out to Parker Stokes. And that is our distance coverage, and we will continue with leg three, which will be the jumps. Third leg was a big portion of the team title hopes and the team title races, and that's our jumps. Man, did that have a lot of upsets and shocks. On the men's side, in particular, I think on the women's side, there's maybe one shock, but on the men's side, it was event after event after event. I was like, what is going on? So I will admit that this is where my 3 and 9 probably gets worse. For the high jump, I had Tyus Wilson of Nebraska and James Snowden of Arkansas Pine Bluff, and had the defending champion Romaine Beckford of Arkansas, formerly of South Florida, now as the dark horse, and that's who won. It wasn't Tyus Wilson, so I'll be 3 and 10 here. It was Romaine Beckford, and he had a season best at that. Um, I don't want to say that I was shocked, but he just had not looked the same way as Tyus Wilson or Caleb Sonnen. They had looked phenomenal all year, but Romaine Beckford just, let's give him credit for showing up regularly in a championship meet. 7 feet 5, 2.26 meters, great jumper, and a huge 10 points for Arkansas, which was scrambling for points on the men's side, which was a shocker because I thought they legit had a shot at winning, the national title. Moving to the pole vault, you have Keaton Daniel of Kentucky versus Seaman Gooderson of Duke, and the dark horse being Connor McClure of Virginia Tech. This is where my 3 and 10 goes to 4 and 10. I did pick Keaton Daniel, and Keaton Daniel, no 19-foot jump, but did enough. 18 feet, 7 1/4 inches, the season best for him. Gooderson finished fourth, and Virginia Tech's Connor McClure finished tied for eighth. But hats off to Keaton Daniel going out in a great way as a senior for Kentucky, and he's had a pretty solid career. And it remains to be seen who will be the new Pro Vault program. Will it still be Virginia Tech, even though the head coach was retiring? Then the long jump, I had it as Wayne Pinnock versus of Arkansas versus Malcolm Clemens of Florida, with the dark horse being Johnny Brackens of USC. This is where my 4 and 10 goes to 4 and 11 because, yes, shocker, Wayne Pinnock unfortunately had, to me, probably his worst championship meet. Not seeing him, he just seemed to be off his game. Didn't seem to be comfortable, and he finished fifth with just 26.2 1/4. Malcolm Clemens finished third, 26.5. That was his season's best, 8.05 meters. Um, Johnny Brackens was fourth at 8.03 meters, 26.4 1/4. But the winner was USC sophomore Kristen John or JC Stevenson of USC, 26.11, 3 1/4 inches, no 27-foot jump. 8.22 meters. And USC jumps, and as I said in the preview, back in a big way. And this showed here because he's just a sophomore. Him and Brackens will be back next year, and they're going to have a powerful punch. Pinnock should, I think, return next year, and so will Clemens. So the only person moving on will be Jeremiah Davis of Florida State, who finished second. But hats off to Kristen John Stevenson of USC for pulling off the surprise upset because he was going into the finals as number 8. And on his last jump, he vaulted to the front. So congratulations to him. In the triple jump, another shock. I had it as Russell Robinson of Miami versus Jeremiah Davis of Florida State versus Brandon Green of Oklahoma. And I did go with Russell Robinson, so this is where my 4-11 goes to 4-12. Because not even the dark horse, Sean Dixon Bodie, who did not have a great performance, was able to come up with the win. It was Salif Main of FDU. Not even mentioned not one time this year on this channel or any major channel, but he found a way to win. He outdueled Russell Robinson by literally 1 meter, 56 2.5 to 56 2 3/4. 17.13 meters to 17.14 meters. So I should say it's a thousandth of a meter. Uh, that is huge and a big win for Salim and Russell Robinson finishing second. Both of those young men are seniors, so they'll be moving on. Brandon Green did finish third, 54.6 3.25 inches, 16.63 meters. He's a sophomore, so he'll be the big guy next year. But huge congratulations to Salif Main for making sure your name is mentioned. In our final jumping event, I've moved the decathlon to the jumps section instead of the throws because it's decathlon has multiple events, but we'll shift it around. The decathlon, I had it as Leo Neugebauer, which is the correct way to pronounce his last name. So you're going to hear me correcting the names today. I'm sorry. The defending champion against Heath Baldwin of Michigan State. And shame on me. This is where I knew I should have waited to the heat sheets for the decathlon came out because Heath Baldwin was not in the competition. It was another Michigan State athlete, but didn't matter because it was all Leo. He broke the collegiate record yet again. He looked pretty good in every event except for one, and I'm going to harp on it because it's the only event I think it's his one weakness, and I think it's the hurdles. And it boggles my mind. It shouldn't, but it does boggle my mind because I'm like, isn't he like 6'6", 6'7"? But it is difficult as we think it should be easy for a guy that tall to just hurdle, but we don't know if it could be the issues with the way he moves his legs, whatever. But he still finished fifth overall in the hurdles and at a personal best. So at least he's attempting to improve that. But he was strong. He won the shot put. He won the long jump. He won the high jump. He won the discus. He was close in the javelin. He finished fourth. Finished fifth in the high hurdles. In the 400, he finished sixth. In the 100, he finished third. That is a heck of a day. And then the 1500, in the pole vault, excuse me, he also won that. And then in the 1500, which is his, his that actually is his worst event, not the hurdles. It's the final long distance race, which clearly wore him out. The 1500, he was more towards the back of the pack there. But he did finish, and it clearly was some type of pain. He finished, let's see, 20th out of 22, but that was still at the season's best, 4:44.61. However, it was enough to secure the collegiate record, and with 5 victories, I mean, who's to deny the greatness of that young man? He just continues to just wow. Hats off to him. Sad to see him go because he has been great. We will miss him, those of us who discuss and watch and love college track and field, because he's just been outstanding. But I look forward to seeing what he does this summer in Paris representing Germany and what he'll do moving forward. The NCAA champions, as of late, have really kind of been dominating the decathlon at the Olympic level. It seems that the decathletes from other countries have no problem with coming over here, competing, as in the past. Some of them actually stayed in their home countries and just trained. But coming over here, developing, and still competing for their country has kind of served well. And I think he's going to represent Germany in a big positive way. Then we will go discuss our fourth and final section, which is, or fourth and our anchor leg rather, which is the throws. Our anchor leg, the throws, we had some upsets, but we also had some positive wins that we predicted. So right now, because I did predict Leo, that'll have me at 5-12, um, and I'm moving in the right direction. So with the throwing events, we'll get started with the shot put. And I did, I'm going to say, moving right to the right direction, 6-12, because I did predict Tariq Robinson O'Hagan of Ole Miss over Dylan Taggart and Christopher Licata of South Carolina, both those South Carolina throwers. Unfortunately, Licata did not perform as well as I think he would like to have, but Dylan Taggart did do well. But heads off to Tariq Robinson O'Hagan. And Ole Miss just continues to be a phenomenal throws program. So let's give our hats off to Connie Price Smith, who continues to develop these great throwers. And although some of them didn't have the weekends that she would like, she did, of course, lead home with an NCAA champion. Dylan Taggart finished third overall, and the other dark horse we had, Alexander Klosnikov, was sixth. The runner-up was Jason Swearens from Wisconsin, who I think is going to be the big challenger for Tariq Robinson O'Hagan from the Big Ten moving forward. But I still do think that the SEC is the better throwing conference. Then our next throwing event is the discus. We had it as Francois Prinsloo of South Alabama versus Demetrios Pavlidis of Kansas, and the dark horse was Kai Chang of Florida. Um, this did not go as expected. I did pit Pavlidis of Kansas. He did finish third, but Francois Prinsloo of South Alabama did come away with the victory. So that takes me from 6-12 out of 6-13. The runner-up, however, we got to talk about him, the young freshman, Raquel Broderick of USC, 202 feet 8 inches, 61.77 meters to Prinsloo's 63.51 meters, which was 208 feet 4 inches. Not a bad day at the office for the young freshman. And Kai Cheng for Florida found a way to finish fifth, scoring 4 big team points for the Gators. So now I'm looking at 6-13, but I'm moving now to 7-13 because in the men's hammer, we had my prediction is Rowan Hamilton of Cal versus Trey Knight of Cal State, Northridge, and the dark horse being Kenneth Ikiji of Harvard, the defending champ. And I went with Rowan Hamilton, and that's who came away with the victory. Rowan Hamilton had the best mark of the collegiate season, 253 feet 2 inches, 77.18 meters, a big, huge 10 team points for Cal. Ikiji came in second for Harvard, and Trey Knight finished all the way in sixth. I think next year it'll be between Ikiji and Trey Knight, but we can't ignore what a young freshman, Angelos Mantzurinas, excuse me for butchering these names, of Minnesota finished third with 247 feet 8 inches, 75.50 meters. Talented young freshman, and we're probably going to hear more from him. Minnesota really has become one of the better sprint program, or excuse me, not sprint, throws programs. I'm all over the place. All right, and then our last throwing event, the javelin, that was a great event. The javelin really had some ahs. This is where I'll go from 7-13 to 7-14 because the winner was Mark Minicello of Georgia, 264 feet 9 inches. And even though I had him listed here as a favorite versus Chinichiram Prosper Namdi of Baylor, I picked the dark horse Zuriel Rodrigo of LSU since he had already won this event twice. And this is unfortunately a time where he did not come through. He finished 12th overall, even though it was a season best. But Mark Minicello finished first. He is the winner. And Chinichiram Prosper Namdi of Baylor was fourth. Um, I think this is where we see Rodrigo lead, but I mean, he may have another season available to him, courtesy of COVID. If he is out of eligibility, then we were looking at a new champion because Mark Minicello, to my knowledge, is moving on also. So that'll put all eyes squarely on Chinchiram Prosper Namdi of Baylor. And our last discussion point of the day will be the team title battle. I'm going to trickle on in here because this is where I go 7-15, but I'm happy because I admit here multiple times I'm a big Florida Gator fan. I love the way their program has been since I graduated from high school, which was in 2004. I immediately became a fan because of Karan Clement. and have been a fan since then. Even through my 4.5 years at Eastern Michigan, when I graduated, I was still a Gator fan. And I had it listed as Texas, Florida, Arkansas, and I picked Arkansas to win, but it ended up being the Florida Gators completing a three-peat 2022, 2023, and 2024. And they're going to be a strong team again next year. And I'm positive he's going to tap that transfer portal because there's no one doing it quite like him, other than I think the program, Arkansas is doing it very well. But those two teams seem to be really competing for national titles. And I think that's the way to go. People really need to give the transfer portal a look. And hats off to Coach Mike Holloway because there are a lot of personal bests. We didn't see Wanya McCoy really, I think, meet up to the standards in the 200 because I really think he had a capability of winning it. But hats off to Robert Gregory in the 200 who stepped up. The 400 Javon Powell of Jamaica, 44.5. He's now the fastest Jamaican this year. So he has hit the Olympic standard. So I'm sure this is not the last we've heard of him. Hopefully, Team Jamaica can make it in the 4x4. As we are aware, they're currently on the outside looking in, trying to qualify. Hats off to the Florida Gators. 41 points. It came down to the 4x4. Even though they didn't win it, we cannot ignore the two great anchors we saw from James Benson of Arkansas and, of course, Ahmad Robinson of Texas A&M. Surprisingly, the fastest, though, was James Benson with the 43.18. Who I think those two men should both get a serious look for possibly making Team USA. Granted, I was a little disappointed in Benson because he did not make the final in the 400. That was one of the big shocks of who didn't make it. But I think we will see more of those two young men in the future, specifically Ahmad Robinson. To be a short guy, and I'm a short guy, just 5'8", so I understand the looks we get from the 6'2", 6'3" guys. He's not scared of them, and he shows up and literally mows them down. And he did that because, man, did that anchor against Genoa McIver look rough. Because I was rooting for McIver, who had a great semi. He ran a 44-1 split. I thought, oh, he looks much better shape. Things have worked out because, at the regional meet, it didn't look the same. He looked a little off, but he looked great here. And still, with a 43.8 was nothing to Ahmad Robinson's 43.2. So that is our recap. My next video will be the women's, and I'm going to make sure that the comment section is on because I keep going back and saying it's restricted, so I apologize. It should not be. So forgive me. I am really, really trying to improve the engagement with this channel. Your views are so appreciated. I really do want this channel to be a space for us to flourish. The next video after the women's recap, it does not, even though the season ends, does not mean we'll not talk about it. I also want to talk about the Olympic trials and the collegiate athletes that we will be seeing and how they perform. So this is definitely not goodbye, but thanks for listening, and I will see you next time.